Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, we're talking about taking photos of pop stars. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Oh, welcome back to this episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. I'm Raymond Hatfield, and I cannot tell you how happy I am that you are here with me today. We're going to learn a lot of things. And I hope right now that you're doing well. I really hope that you are in a place where you're able to try something new and try to continue to stay creative and doing something with your camera to make this experience, worth it, essentially. Doing something to document this time that we're all in right now. But the thing is that we're all experiencing this global pandemic entirely different than one another. And when you tell somebody to go document something, document an event, document a period of time, document something, we as photographers, we're really good at wanting to document others' experiences. But very rarely do we ever document our own. Even as parents, we document our children. We document, everything else, but very rarely do we document our own experiences. Doing something to document this time that we are in right now is going to be incredibly important later on. So try to do that this week, because I would love to see what your life looks like right now. If you're not already, I would love to invite you into the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group, where we share our photos, ask questions, free of any judgment, no matter where you are right now as a photographer. So come in, say hi, because again, I'd really love to see the experience that you are having right now. It doesn't have to be, some big event. It doesn't have to be, anything crazy or even special going on. But simply the fact that you are living through this right now warrants documenting it. So figure out how you could do that. Figure out, what is a little bit different in your life right now than it would have been, say, 6 months ago, and hopefully 6 months from now. Who knows? But figure that out. Share it in the group. I would love to see it. Also, I know that many of you use your camera as, a side hustle. Maybe you've shot a few portraits or a wedding or two. Maybe you've done a mini session. But deep down, you want to turn it into more. And maybe you aspire to going full time. But in the middle of a global pandemic where we are being asked to stay at home, you're wondering if you should just hold off on putting yourself out there and really growing a photography business, because after all, it's not really like we can, book any shoots right now or go out and do any shoots right now anyway. Now, if you heard my interview last week with Mary Fisk Taylor, or even in today's interview as well, you'll know that to run a successful photography business, so many things happen behind the scenes. On top of shooting and editing, there is marketing. Now, marketing is not just putting out an ad for somebody to book, say, hey, 25% off right now if you book right now. No. That's not what marketing is. Sometimes it's simply sending out a thank you card to a past client, or writing a blog post on the best places to take photos in your city. Or marketing is doing anything that you can do to help your client or potential client. That's marketing. That is marketing. And I read an article recently that said that businesses that continue to market during a recession grew 40% faster than those that stopped marketing during that same time. And again, marketing isn't about pushing the sale. That's sales. And that is why, starting May 11th, I will be releasing a new video every single day of my new photography marketing ideas training video just for premium members in the premium member Facebook group. And on May 15th, I will be hosting a Facebook Live Again, just for premium members with more marketing ideas that you can actually implement right now that aren't salesy, there's no weird tactics, there's nothing that will help you come out of this pandemic with a stronger business foundation than when you started. So if you want to join but you're not a premium member, no worries. I'm going to do this again. I'm opening up the doors. You can become a premium member before April 14th, and I will refund your first month's payment, which will give you access to all of these new marketing ideas and this Facebook Live training on May 15th. And then you'll also get access to all the past trainings, from picture perfect pricing to define your ideal client, create a client workflow, and more. All free for your first month. And you can sign up right now by heading to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and then just click that premium membership button up at the top of the page to join. So that's it about that. Today's guest, I'm so excited for this. Today's guest is an entertainment, fashion, pop star photographer, Joseph Cultice. And Joseph Cultice has shot print and advertising campaigns for bands like No Doubt, Ozzy Osborne, Kelly Clarkson, Juicy J, 303, Moby, Korn, Enrique Iglesias, Marilin Manson, Christina Aguilera, Joe Satriani, Nine Inch Nails, Rod Stewart, Garbage, Beck, Kid Rock, Boy George, Sting, BJork, Outcast, the Chemical Brothers, the Jonas Brothers, and Beyonce. Just to name a few. This guy is incredible to talk to. The amount of stories he has is fantastic. I really think that you're going to enjoy this episode. So right now, let's just get on into this interview right now with Joseph Cultice. Normally, I always love to start from the beginning. But for you, I want to take a little bit of a different approach because you've been doing this for so long. So my question for you is, 30 years. Tell me when you knew that photography was going to play a major role in your life.
Well, see, I grew up in Phoenix, and I was in a couple bands, punk rock bands, and I was taking photographs all the time at the punk rock shows, and that was my hobby. I was doing it in school, but I'd never really imagined a life as a photographer. The Meat Puppets lived down the street from me, and they knew I was taking photographs. And they were like, "Can you take our photos for this thing?" And I'm like, "Sure, just don't, you know." I don't know if I said don't tell anybody, but they didn't tell anybody. And then they didn't use my name on the picture credit for the album. So I probably did say don't tell them, because I didn't want to be known as taking photographs for whatever reason. That picture came out. That's in the back of Meat Puppets too. And then I started doing more and more pictures of them later, because I was in a band and the band just dissolved. And I had gotten a couple little tastes of what it was like to be famous for in a band. And I didn't want to do it anymore. I don't think any of these were conscious decisions, but when I go back and have to answer this question, that's the real reason. I didn't want to be famous. I'd rather be behind the scenes. So then as the photography grew and I got better and better at it and got more warm fuzzies for doing it, I became a photographer. And then I really did make a conscious decision that this is what I'm going to do. But it was all because the Meat Puppets asked me to take their band photo. I was taking tons of pictures, but it wasn't like, here, I want to do a band album cover.
Music was your first love. What would you say was the difference? Like, how did you approach it differently? I'm assuming at the time you were just shooting.
I was shooting little Pentax Mi Supra with a bad Sigma lens that makes it really funky and distorted. I had like a 50 and a 28. That's all I had. And I was just shooting punk, like you go on my site on the Papa's Personal and see all those early punk rock pictures. And there was just like a point where when I would take the camera to every show, I was like, I'm really going to take pictures unconsciously. But it was just a way, it's also a way to be a part of the music scene and to be part of it. And my band sucked, so I never got to play any of those great shows.
So for that first album cover, was it just a portrait? Was it you had to come up with a concept? It was
funny. The Meat Puppets dragged me. We went out to the desert, and it sure was just we did smoke pot the whole time. And I was taking pictures with my Pentax, black and whites. And we had a Polaroid camera, an SX70, and I was taking pictures with the SX70 for fun. and it's a silhouette of them against the desert sky, and it's not even the whole band. It's just like Kurt, and that's what they ended up using was this. That was the back album cover. That's their
So
band photo.
your idea at the time was, hey, we'll just go out, we'll have some fun, and whatever you like, you can use for whatever you want. There was no real rationale behind
there
it.
was no rationale behind it. It was just take pictures, and they were
Wow.
like the first band I really photographed a lot. They literally lived 3 houses down from me, and I don't think they ever paid me any money.
So when that happened, did something change inside of you that you decided I'm going
See,
to
it's
pursue
not
this
that
further?
philosophical, really. I think it was just it was something I was good at, obviously, and I enjoyed doing. And then, like I said, people appreciated it. So then you got warm fuzzies from people for doing it, and then I just continued to do it. And then there was a certain point in college. I was in college at the time. So then, what am I going to be? God, it was the last 2 years of college. I got really serious about it. I started shooting for the New Times, which was the Village Voice of Phoenix, and I got to shoot. Like it was funny last night. A friend of mine posted a picture of Donny Osmond, and that was the first celebrity I ever photographed, besides the Meat Puppets, I guess, was Donny Osmond, someone from my childhood. But I photographed him with a 50 millimeter lens, really close to him, and it makes his forehead like that much.
Large.
So it's just like you realize, oh God, I have no idea what I'm doing. Most of those things where I had no idea what I was doing, but I kept getting opportunities like to shoot for the newspaper, to shoot for other bands. And I just happened to be the only guy around that was really doing it. And that's how it
Do,
just, yeah, it's really
you
just
think
how it
that's how
happened.
you got those gigs?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a hustler. You have to be a hustler. So I hustled it. I don't think anybody, I don't think anybody said, "Here you go. Here's your career." I just kind of hustled my way through it, and it really was like the last 2 years of college. I really was busting ass to take photographs constantly. I just became a fan of Gary Winogrand, who would just shoot tons and tons of film. I thought it was Gary Winogrand, but when I go back and look at these shoots and stuff, I would shoot like if I shot 10 frames, that would be a lot of frames. I'd go and there'd be rolls of contact sheets where at the top part of it there'd be portraits of Genesis Peorage, and then there'd be like a picture of somebody at the house or the cat, and then there'd be a picture of um, I would go and take pictures of people who started restaurants, like the Thai restaurant down the street, and I get the two owners holding up their favorite dishes. There'd be 4 frames of that, and then there would be pictures of like Timothy Leary, literally on the same 36 frames, and then maybe some pictures of the cat. And I had to process the film and get the prints ready for the newspaper, and all that. Like I went into Timothy Leary's dressing room, begged my way in there, and got 4 frames. That's all I did, and he's just there. It's funny. But that's just how different now. I shoot gazillions. All the rolls of film I would shoot when I was shooting film. 80 rolls was pretty, of 220 would be pretty regular.
Pretty expensive. Yeah.
Well,
Wow.
yeah, I wasn't paying for it. That's the 90s, the heyday.
So when you'd go in there and you would only shoot 4 frames, so you'd have one roll that just had so much variety on that. Was that because you were so limited on time, or because you got what it was that you needed? Was there something else behind that?
I think film costed money. I don't know. I kept looking at it going, I expected to go and look at my contact sheets as I scan my archive and see, half a roll on Timothy Leary at least. No, there's only 4 frames. I'm like, wow, I don't know what I was thinking, to be quite honest. I think a lot of times half the energy was spent getting into the dressing room with Timothy Leary, convincing his road manager, even though it was sent there by the local newspaper, the local liberal newspaper, um, to get them to let me do it. I talked my way into Run DMC's dressing room, into Billy Idol's dressing room to do pictures of him. And I'm just a kid.
And
I
these
had
were
really
just all
long
for the
hair. I
paper?
was super skinny. I had blue-black hair. I wore all black. I looked like kind of like a Robert Smith, Nick Cavey kind of character, and with a camera, a little bag full of like a bad little umbrella with 2 battery-powered strobes in it, with like a long cord, and that was my whole lighting setup,
Mhm, mhm.
and a hot light sometimes.
So and you, so these photos that you're taking it was
Yeah.
for the paper. These were commissioned
Yeah.
things. You had to get these, right?
Yes.
So during this point, did you say to yourself, or I guess let me re-ask the question. Um, when do you first feel like you considered yourself a what do you consider yourself right now?
A pop star photographer.
So when
Yeah.
was the first time that you considered yourself a pop star photographer?
It's odd. The whole thing of calling yourself an artist
Mhm.
or, you know, a big photographer or whatever, I've never been comfortable with that because Picasso, and Gary Winogrand's another example, or Avedon. I've seen those guys work, and they never stopped doing photography. Picasso, he just painted every day, all day long. I've never had that kind of tenacity to do it constantly. I have a life outside of taking photos. But those Avedon's an artist. He never stopped working. He was constantly working. And he had no personal relationships to speak of because of it.
You don't consider yourself an artist?
It's a weird world, word, because my son gets mad at me. Like, you're totally an artist. Come on, what are you talking about? I guess I'm an artist, yeah. But I just like, you know, rappers. They'll make 4 songs and like, I'm an artist, man. Like, you're not an artist yet, man. You got to do this your whole life. I think at 30 years now, I've been doing it, and I haven't let up. I'm hustling now harder than I ever have to continue to be able to do this.
I'm interested to find out what you would define an artist as. What would you say the definition of an artist is?
Well, it's funny because the definition of an artist really is somebody who works in their craft all the time, which is, in most art is a craft. It's being very disciplined and doing it constantly. And I guess I do that, maybe not to the degree of Avedon or Annie Leibovitz. She just lives and breathes it, but that's her entire identity. I think maybe after I had my kid, my identity shifted a bit. You know, he's more important to me than pretty much anything. So, and Katsura too. Oh, she can.
It's great.
They, all these big philosophical questions about photography.
Were
I
you
love
just
taking
expecting,
pictures. It's
what
like we were
shutter
talking
speed were you
about
using?
jobs. Like, it's when I get, I'm super motivated when I get a job of my own. I mean, or a job that I've been commissioned for, and it's a blast getting it together, pitching the ideas, figuring out how I'm going to do it, realizing that now I've just pitched an idea that costs a lot more money than I said it was going to cost.
You're gonna have
And
to
they
make
just go
it
back
work.
and go, "Can I please have $10,000 more dollars?" Or, you know, it's not that much. The last garbage shoot was almost that much, but they're used to me doing that at this point.
Well, that's funny because that brings me into kind
Yeah,
of where I was going with all this, which is like where you're at now. You're working with lots of artists, you're working with lots of bands, and you're
yeah.
not doing
Still,
a
yeah,
single portrait. You're doing essentially not only a cover shoot, I suppose,
yeah,
but like a whole print and advertising campaign. Like these
yeah.
photos are going to be used for lots of things. So, who reaches out to you, and where does that process start?
Well, it's changed since the heyday of the '90s per se, where there's just so many record labels and so many magazines. Like I worked for American Vogue for 10 years. I worked for every major record label. I've shot for just about every cable company there is. Some repeat customers, some not in the cable world. But they reach out purely just from you hustling to get your work in front of them and then keeping that relationship open with them. And I've been lucky that I'd say about 5 or 6 art directors I've become good friends with. And I don't feel bad when they don't hire me for things. I grumble about it, um, but they become friends. But it's hustling. It's getting out there and talking to people. If you
And
just
it's
sit
the
in
art director. Sorry,
all
go
art
on.
directors, yeah.
Mhm.
Like Eddie Jew and Jeff Schultz and I can't say Todd's last name too well. Galapili for Meat and Potatoes.
But the art director is the one who will reach out to you if
Yeah.
there's a new artist.
Well, it's when they know I'm a hustler, so they know I'll bring something fresh to it. It's like I have a huge cachet of ideas that one pop star said no to, or didn't work for a TV show, and then I'll just reuse it or refine it. I don't think I do too many images over and over again because lighting might be consistent, but the concept itself, you can't. It's like I can't go and shoot one artist and have them show up around the same time with this similar photograph. That's like,
Right.
like say Anton Corbijn used to be able to get away with that for whatever reason. He would do every big, humongous band in the world from Depeche Mode to U2 in the exact same style.
Mm-hmm.
And their pictures would be everywhere. And it's obvious it's Anton's pictures. But for then it worked. It was a style. It was almost like a sign of it was a sign of the times. So it was that kind of look, the 90s, early 2000s.
So you take
I would
an
get really
entirely
bored
different
doing the
approach.
same picture all the time, I think. That's always been my excuse. I just can't do the same picture all the time. I go crazy.
So so you have this whole list of ideas that you have. Is it
Yeah.
typically you who approaches the artist
Yeah,
and says, I have this idea?
Yeah, it's usually me actually. I'd say there is a good crossover. Like the stuff I did with Joe Satriani just recently. Todd came to me and said, I want to do light painting, because blah blah blah. It's called shape shifting. And then I went and dug up a whole bunch of pictures. Todd dug up a bunch of examples of light painting, and we basically kind of figured out which one we liked, what part of it, and then just put it together. But that was his impetus. But then, like say with the most recent garbage shoot, I just there's a Desert X is what it was called. It was out in the middle of the desert, and they put all these huge mirrored houses and mirrored obelisks out in the middle of the desert, and it reflected everything around it. So I just became fascinated with mirrors, and then I talked Shirley into letting me do a picture with mirrors, which costs money. It costs more money than we thought because it had to be real mirrors. It couldn't be plastic ones.
Why is that?
Because they distort.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Specifically in the heat?
No, just in general because they're plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was fun. It all worked out. It was we can talk about that shoot later. But so the ideas come from a mixture of the art directors, but a lot of times I think they're so burned out that they want to find an idea. They're hoping that you have something that you can come up with.
Ready to go.
But a lot of times the artists, that's not true. Like well, it's weird. Like Joy Wave, that album cover I sent you, the guy is like chopped up cubes. He has a mustache and my kind of glasses. Those are all from a series of photographs I've done called The Arc, and they're all personal photographs of family members with that lighting. That's all really low tech, Home Depot, Kinos, and some weird hot lights I have, and a bad ring light. At one point I built the bad ring light, but now I actually have one of those plastic ones. But I had gifted those prints, or maybe I can't remember. Coyote bought these prints of me and my family, and they sent them to their studio in Boston and put them up on behind the reception desk. Really huge prints of them.
Oh wow!
And so this is the weird how coincidences work. So the band Joy Wave, Daniel, the singer, was at that photo studio to do a shoot in Boston for whatever reason. And he took a picture of those with his phone and thought they were cool. So then he sent the art director, Annie Jew, I like these pictures. Can we do something like this? And it's like, well, I know that guy. That's one of my photographers I work with all the time. And then there we go. And then I don't know where I thought I started experimenting with the picture, chopping it up, and then Annie was like, "Oh, here's a picture of Picasso. Make it that Picasso thing we keep talking about, the cubism thing." And then I just worked with that until it turned into what it was, and it was a GIF too. That was the other part.
Wow.
Their marketing was a GIF, so his lips and I had him do a million strange faces. It was good fun, but that's all with $50 worth of lighting, maybe 75.
But this whole idea came from essentially a personal project. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you go on my site, it's under personal, it's the arc. And all that stuff is shot with just bad lighting on purpose. It all came from that. I sent you that thing. You have everything you need, which is kind of
Yes.
similar to what you had talked about in your email of what was it you used to work with what you
Make
have
do.
or make
Yeah,
do?
make
Yeah,
do. Mhm.
make do sounds a little sounds down. You have everything you need. So when I moved to L.A. from New York, that person's posters were all over Silver Lake and Atwater, and I was sitting in my office, and this right when the huge economic downturn happened, and I have like 80 grand worth of cameras and computers, but not too many lights. But I had those fluorescents. I had a bad Lowell hot light kit from for I've had forever and ever and ever. I don't even know how that ended up in my house at one point. I tried to figure that out, but anyhow, so I realized I have everything I need to make some photos to start a series. So I literally just kind of figured out the lights, and then I realized I really wanted a ring light. So then I took a construction was being happening in the bathroom, and they had pulled the old circular
Oh yes.
fluorescent off the ceiling. So that I took that, got new bulbs, stuck it on a piece of wood, and it was really heavy. And I'd lift this thing up and down. That would be the ring light with one 2x2 one 2 bulb 4 foot Kino, but it's
Hmm.
actually just home fluorescence with the actual Kino silver um,
Reflector.
reflector in there,
Hmm.
and that was the light. And then with two hot lights behind their heads. But that took a couple of. I shot my mom and my kid and a couple other friends, and then I've done that. I've probably done it 300 times now with different people. I do it with this different groups of families. You go to their house and they have a couple years from when they're little kids to now they're teenagers,
Oh,
all
that's
from our
great.
schools. Yeah, it's really beautiful, and I love the
Yeah.
way they look. And that's where I started getting back into hot lights and blurry stuff, and I like blurs and clicks, and it's fun. It's
Blurs and
cheap.
clicks. Yeah,
Blurs and
and it's
clicks. You
cheap.
know the little thing in your eye. You know that little.
Yeah. So it's always interesting to me because I'm not sure if there's. It really feels like there's always really type of people.
Mm,
Those who need everything to be perfect in order just to get started.
yeah.
I think that I'm one of those, unfortunately. And then there's those who are just going to get started no matter what, and then they're going to refine as time goes on. Would you say that before this moment where you found this ring light, the circular fluorescent, you were one or the other?
No, I think uh, I've just always just done, using your thing. As I have whatever I have, and I have to do it right now. I think that a lot of that came from when I was working for the New Times. Um, I'd be forced into a dressing room in 5 minutes with somebody, and I'd have 4 minutes to take a picture of them. So I just had to
Hmm.
make do with whatever I had. And sometimes it was really successful, and then you know, most of the time it was pretty successful. Actually, I kind of missed that. When I used to work with Annie, we'd spend all this time in these huge productions and sets, and then we'd just race off someplace else and take other pictures. Same with like Ockenfels. I think like I went to school for photography, but I really learned um, how to become a photographer when I was an assistant in New York, like what the game really is and how you make it work. Um, the big show, as they say. So you just make do with what you have. Really, that's kind of your thing. You have everything you need right there. They're both the same. It's a good.
Yeah.
It's a
I
good.
mean, it all comes back to the same, right? It's
Yeah,
it's all kind of the same message, but I like what you said. Mine kind of sounds a little forceful. Like
yeah.
you just do it, you make do,
Just do
you
it, man. You
just
got
go at
nothing.
it. Yeah, just go make something.
Well, I was just trying to
Would
be positive at the time too. It was like weird. Like I went from doing 10 shoots a month to doing 10 shoots a year. Like with a year, I'm like, what the just happened? Oh,
And that was after moving from New York
yeah.
to
We were really
LA.
lucky though. We owned a brownstone in New York, and we sold it, not knowing that any of this was going to happen, and we made money on it, so we were fine. But it was just like, wow, it was weird. It was really weird. The whole,
What?
it's changed everything. I don't know what happened,
Yeah,
but housing
yeah.
crisis. What's going to happen now is what I really
Oh
want to
man, yeah, I know. Where
know.
it's it's
Uncharted
it's
territory right now.
it's a very interesting time to be alive and to be working as a commissioned
Yeah,
artist.
yeah,
But I want to go back to New York for a second. So
yeah,
you moved from Phoenix to New
yeah.
York,
So,
and was
like to
that
go back to
specifically for
Phoenix, there
photography?
was at a point when at the end of it, because I just had this discussion with Katsura, it was I'd spent a lot of time in LA when I was growing up. When the bands would go play there, I'd go see shows, And really, to become a professional photographer, then it was either, and to be an assistant was to either move to LA or move to New York. And I had never been to New York. So I knew LA was filled with flakes. So I decided to move to New York, just like on a whim. And at the time, my girlfriend at the time, she was going to summer school at NYU. So I got to go and see New York. And I just went there with a resume and a portfolio, one of those bad plastic, kind of weird plastic portfolios. The whole thing's plastic, filled with tear sheets and my photos, and just started bugging photographers to be an assistant. Like Tom Catrino, who's a big J. Crew catalog guy. He's one of the first guys to hire me out there. And who I'm still friends with now, especially on Instagram. It makes me feel good all the time. But I went there and learned the show, like things you just don't learn in school. I don't know what schools are like now, but back then it was either all the fine art stuff or only technique. And neither of those things will mesh well together. You need both. Like literally no one used any strobes when I went to college. I was the only person who used strobes. It's
That's
all
very
about
interesting.
the light. Find that natural light.
Oh, that's very strange. That's very strange. You think it was just purely an aesthetic thing?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's Phoenix. You can tell it's Phoenix.
Who knows with Phoenix? My mom lives in Phoenix right now. We just went out last year. It's so when I'm always interested about these early days as a photographer because it's always fun. It's as somebody who's in that spot, you can't look forward and see what the future is going to hold, right? So at that point, were you taking every gig that came your way? Were you specifically looking for bands, or were you just?
I took every gig, literally. And if you look at all those old black and white rolls of film, I took every gig. Every gig I did for New Times, I think they paid me $75 for every.
So the more
if I got a cover, it was like $300. Maybe they sent me to photograph the real estate rapist in prison, and it was a cover. And I didn't know he was a rapist. I had no idea who this guy was. They didn't tell me.
How do you shoot something like that then?
They came back with the photos, and they were really like, he looked soft, and I was making pretty pictures of this guy. I felt bad for him. He was in prison. I didn't know for years he had been luring women to open, to look at the house, and then
my gosh!
And then afterwards they tell me, I'm going, why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't
this
you
guy
tell
was
me
the
this?
real estate rapist? Because when they said he's the real estate rapist, you're going, what? Because I knew that I'd heard about it, but
you were within feet of this guy, and you had no idea.
Yeah, I was in a cell with this guy.
Oh no!
Inside a prison cell with him.
And they let you have a camera and like some lights set up with him?
I brought my little strobe thing, and I got some daylight. Him in the bars, looking through the bars.
Very sad clown.
Yeah, I don't think he was gonna rape me, but he looked really sad and pathetic. He was busted.
Yeah,
it was horrible. He's a monster. He ruined lots of people's lives. But so and New Times got, I still have the letters to the editor because they gave them to me. They thought it was funny because it was like, you made him look so empathetic, like we should feel sorry for him in the pictures. They don't read the article, of course. They just look at the pictures.
Of course, yeah.
And that's what. So I took everything, but that was fun. It's funny now. I wish I could go and do more of those kind of pictures. Sure. At a certain point in New York, I was getting offered lots of politicians, and I had to take pictures for the cover of Parade, right? So basically, I'll do anything. I shot for Parade. Tons of stuff for FHM and Maxim, tons. And I should probably start posting that stuff because it's pretty funny. It's hilarious, actually. But they paid really well. Parade pays really well. They paid like $3,000 for the cover. But this complete asshole.
Sure. Yeah.
He's a monster. And I knew that going in. It made me feel so dirty and gross that like the next week, will you go take pictures of? And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm done. No more of these. I'm not going to give my love to these horrible politicians.
When it came to, being in New York, at what point were you At what point did it switch from I'll take a gig to now this is what I do and artists come to me?
Well, I think when I started making some really big images and I was getting a lot of magazine covers like Option and Ray Gun, a few spin covers, the music work just rolled in. It was all about editorial back then. If you were in the magazines, then the band, well, my big break was Nine Inch Nails. So I was working with Frank Ockenfels as an assistant, and he turned the people on at Musician Magazine to my work. And I was starting to shoot a lot of my own stuff, bands, portraits of actresses and stuff, and putting out cards and doing the hustle, trying to get work. And Frank was nice enough to. I wish I could remember that art director's name, but he told him, and then about me. I think I photographed like Cypress Hill, a jazz guy that was a famous jazz drummer. I photographed television for them when they came back out, Tom Verlaine. But then I got to shoot Trent, and that was right when he put out. He had just signed to Interscope. He was on Broken, was the EP put out, and I knew Nine Inch Nails. I liked him, but I wasn't a Trent freak or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So then, when I photographed Trent, every musician in the world wants to be as cool as Trent Reznor. So
Sure.
then they hire the guy that photographs Trent. I photographed Trent for a musician. It was a really big spread. And then me and Trent got along really well. Unbeknownst to me, he liked me because I did like 5 setups in like an hour. Just walked from set to set. I thought that was the reason, because then they musician ran with one picture, which I love, and then Trent bought all the rest of them to use for a press, because it was done. It didn't cost him very much money. I became best friends with his publicist, Susie Zimmerman from Formula at the time, now Magnum PR. But years later, we always talk about why'd you like me and stuff, blah blah blah. I don't know why that came up, but he was like, oh, because you had Reese's peanut butter eggs, which are those. It was like after Easter, and they were on sale. So all I had there was a bunch of boxes of Reese's peanut butter eggs and Cokes, because there's no money. Was no musician didn't pay any money.
Yeah.
So literally, it's I used to assist Matthew Ralston a lot and we would shoot at Studio One in New York on 4th and Lafayette. So they let me use a studio, I think, for free.
Mm-hmm.
And I shot, Trent there for an hour. I had the morning to set up. He showed up. We did it. But he really liked the pictures. But it was in the end, it was really that he liked the Reese's peanut butter eggs. That's his favorite candy, and mine too. So then that was probably 5 years later. He told me that. I'm like, really? Because then he just started hiring me over, and I would shoot music videos. I would go on the road with them. I did part of a concert film that took years and years later to come out. I did just tons of photo shoots of him. So then those images, my name was next to it, and that's how I met Manson. We met Manson before he was even a rock star. He was a writer, and so I've known Manson before he was even a rock star.
Back to the whole Trent Reznor thing real quick.
Yeah.
With the peanut butter eggs. I think what's really interesting is that building rapport is something that a lot of photographers don't think of when they think about getting into photography. So nowadays, when you're working with bands like Garbage, right?
Yeah.
Like very well-known bands, they come in, you have to introduce yourself, and you have to build rapport quick because you're in charge of their image. So how do you build that rapport efficiently?
Well, it's not even so much building rapport. It's just like Shirley and Garbage is a perfect Shirley Manson is a perfect example of it. You just don't be a flake, and being a flake is don't overpromise and be realistic with what you can do. And if you're going to be late with something, you don't wait until the day it's due to say it's going to be a day late. If you know 2 days before that this retouching is not going to be done, let them know that it might be late, and then surprise them if it's early. It's just it's basically not being a flake and keeping on top of it. Shirley's a really good example, because like when we did the last record, and literally I was lucky too. I think maybe back in the day it would have been harder to keep up on this, but she had an idea of we photographed them in a backyard. It's the double truck of their album, and they're in this big backyard with all these flowers, $3,000 worth of flowers. Another example of I come up with a great idea, and Shirley, we have a
How much
$10,000
could
budget,
flowers be?
and then I find out, my God, flowers cost $3,000 or $4,000. I had no idea, and she was like, "Really? Even fake flowers cost that much?" So she's like, "It's a fucking genius idea. Let's do it." And I found the backyard behind my the studio. Anyhow, so she had the idea for their website of having them dissolve into the photograph and then undissolve, as an opener. She asked me to do that. And of course, I had plates in the backyard. I put that together for her probably in an afternoon. And then sent it to her. So what I'm getting at is to build a rapport with musicians, TV studios, magazines, is they've hired you and you just have to really be on top of it. You can't be a flake about it. And then they will come to you because they know they can rely on you. So once you've built that rapport with them and keep it up as well, then they just keep hiring you, because there's a lot of flakes out there. The horror stories I've heard from rock stars about, they do a photo shoot, they give the person, 20 grand, and then it takes them a month to get a print out of them. And then, all these kind of things. I'm just like, really? Dude, I'm all over this. Like, you'll have these up online tomorrow morning. You crazy? That was like Gary Newman. His album cover before that, he said it was a nightmare. It took him like 6 months. They had to delay putting out the record and all the press because the people that they had hired to do these great pictures in the end, they just flaked on him constantly. So then the other part was, he said that he wanted it to be all crunchy and worn. And they were like, "No, we don't want to do that." I'm like, "What? The Gary Newman wants you to make it crusty and worn. Just do some treatments, make it crusty and worn." So he literally took the prints they sent him, put them on the cement in front of his house, and just rubbed it on the cement. And then they rescanned it, and that's the cover. And you see it.
Wow.
It looks really chunked up like it was on cement. And going, "Oh yeah, that looks really real," because it is completely real. But I was all over Gary. He was happy in the end. We'll do the new one, I hope.
Yeah. That's horrible to hear that, because obviously a lot of money's got to go into creating an album, putting it out, doing advertising and stuff. The fact that a photographer is going to hold something up like that, essentially you're done after that, right? I would assume, in the industry.
Yeah, and then I would imagine, I don't know if Gary would badmouth them, but well, yeah, he did. He didn't tell me their names though. Doesn't matter. You can tell who they did. It's just like, it's not going to help your career at all.
Sure.
So, especially in this day and age when there's so many freaking photographers that can just take a Canon 5D and put a pretty girl against the wall with the right styling and hair and makeup, then that's half the battle. It's what you put in front of the camera. It's easier now than ever just to point something and make it happen. Back in the day, you would have to know how to expose film and take it to a lab.
So looking at your photos, that is the exact opposite of what you do. It looks very rarely do you just put somebody in a spot, snap the photo, and then you're done. There's a lot of work that goes into your photos. So I do want to talk about one photo in particular, and that is, or I guess not one photo in particular, but Jeff Lynne of ELO.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Right? His new album, or their new album, ELO's new album. You were the one who shot photos for Jeff Lynne. When somebody like Jeff Lynne comes to you, right, I'm sure that you're not coming up with a crazy idea like, let's go out into the desert. This was something a little bit more subdued.
Oh,
but still,
yeah. Totally
interestingly
subdued.
enough,
Fairly subdued, yeah.
So where did that idea come from?
Okay, so Jerry Hayden, who's runs Smog Design, and they've done tons of huge packagings that you'll see. But we work with them in Garbage a lot, and I've done stuff prior to Garbage with Jerry. But Smog Design, Jerry and Ryan, and Ryan's her partner. They wanted me to shoot Jeff Lynne, and I just came up with some rough ideas. But the main thing was to get Jeff to say yes to doing a photo shoot, because he never does photo shoots. He has not done a photo shoot, and I think it was like, I don't think I'm exaggerating, 20 years. He just doesn't do photo shoots. And he wants photos come out, but it's like his friends at his studio, him sitting on a couch with a guitar. They're all kind of useless photos for the most part. They're fine for Instagram or something. But I mean, dude, I love ELO. I
Of course.
forgot how much I loved ELO until I got the job, and I realized this was the music of my teenage years. I'd sit in that Out of the Blue album cover. I would sit there and look at that and just listen to it over and over and over again. So it was a real rush when it all started to come together and happening. And Jeff is an eccentric rock star. He wanted to be near his house. He wanted certain kinds of food, all these things you'd expect. Like I was kind of petrified. Jerry and those guys were petrified that he was going to show up and not want to do it. But I'm going to say it's me. Jeff really liked me right off the bat. I didn't have a lot of strobe stuff. It's literally those bad Kinos mixed with some little inky hot lights, and just had fun with him. And the oddest thing about the shoot is that in a lot of Jerry's the manager is Craig, that runs basically day to day with Jeff, a huge management company. He really helped get Jeff to go from here to there, but Jeff had fun on the photo shoot. He did 7 setups in about 3 hours, which
Wow.
they didn't think he was going to last 40 minutes. Like he'd want to leave. And I also had to shoot with my phone a commercial of him reading a script for, it's great because I have all the raw footage of it, and he messes up, and he's just like Ozzy. Has the same accent as Ozzy. He's from wherever that part of England is. You'll have that, oh
Yeah.
blimey, you know, whatever. They have that accent, which is funny because you never hear Jeff talk.
Of course.
And then he talks, and it's like, oh my God, are you from the same place as Ozzy? You sound just like Ozzy. It was good fun. But we got along great. And he danced, he played guitar. But the crazy thing about the shoot is that there was no music. We didn't play any music because it's in a bouncy cove studio. It's hard to hear to begin with. And Jeff, since he's been doing this for so long, all those really rock stars didn't have ear plugins when they were their ears are all fried. They're fried. And Jerry was saying, or Ryan, Jerry's partner, when he would go to the house to listen to like the record, like in the studio, he'd have it so fucking loud it rattled their lungs. But that's how he can hear it. So it only ruins his hearing more. A lot of the older pop stars, their ears are fried. The newer ones are not going to have that problem because they just have perfect in sound, monitors, and it's not very loud on stage. You can have a conversation on stage. It's so weird.
Yeah, that is weird to think about.
It's really weird. And I don't know if it's not that much fun, really. I'd rather be loud as if I was.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. In the middle of absolutely.
But
when
Metallica
making
is
music,
dead quiet on stage. There's no monitors on stage. Anyhow, blah blah blah. So Jeff, what can I tell you about Jeff? He's just an absolute gent. He's so great. And then it was just little inky lights, just playing with them. It was slow shutter speeds. He played guitar. I couldn't help but sing songs to him that were his songs because I'd been listening to it the week before, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's not bad. Yeah." We just had a good time. It was it was really magical, but it was over in like 3.5 hours, in the door and out, really fast.
So great. In a situation like that brings up that question again about building the rapport. He hadn't done a photo shoot in 20 plus years. When he walks in the door, how much communication have you had before that moment?
None.
What do you do?
Zero.
So then what do you do to make him
I don't think he even
friends?
knew. I don't think he even looked at my website or anything, because Camilla, his partner, is basically his wife. She was like going, "Wow, you're really good. This is fun. I can't believe." And then she was like looking at my website on her phone, going, "You took all these pictures?" I'm like, "Yeah." So basically, Jerry from Smog, she vouched for me, and I work with Sony a lot as well, Sony Music, and they knew I'd be good for it. And that's how. So at that point,
do you feel like there's a level of just trust that has to be had?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The rapport basically comes from, like I was saying, is just don't be a flake. And a flake is beyond just doing your gig, it's communicating. And that's the thing about, like, if you can't overpromise something. You have to know, you can't just say yes. You have to think about what you're really going to do. Are you going to be able to, retouch all this in one day? Or is it going to take a couple days? And you have to be honest. Give me a day or two in this, because as you know, with retouching, it sits and then you go back and look at it and go, oh, that looks horrible. Or I should do more on this, or I should, if I have to do it all in one day and send it away, then it looks a little bit sloppy. It's always great to let it sit there for one day, but that you don't always get that luxury. Most of the time I don't.
I'm under nowhere near the same amount of delivery pressure, I guess, as you. But whenever I shoot a wedding, it's kind of the same, because I will not look at the photos almost for an entire week, because if I do look at them the next day, I'll just want to give up. I want to give the couple back all their money and say, like, I'm sorry, I'm a fraud. Like, you got me. Here I am. So I totally get that. That's funny.
You let it sit for a while. And I don't think a lot of people understand that, because it's the delivery pressure is there a lot of times.
And when
like, I did that Revolver cover just recently.
Oh yeah.
They gave me the job on a Monday. I shot it on a Wednesday or Thursday, and it had to be done that weekend. It was that fast for a turnaround. And then I look back at that retouching and going, I would have done this a little differently now. Plus, I got a new computer, which goes a lot faster now. I would have.
Is it
but it was just,
the new Mac Pro?
Turnaround's insane. But they paid. It was nice. And plus, it's a really great band. That band Ginger. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
They're really great. And they're all really cool. And they're all from the Ukraine.
Oh, that's
they're all friends with Joe Biden's son, and they used to party with them. And I'm just joking. I don't know if they...
That brings me to, I mean, is that obviously that's not a common turnaround time, but what would you say is the average turnaround time for if you're doing some sort of album cover?
Well, it's kind of weird about the turnaround time thing. It's like, I always go back to when FedEx wasn't there, right? And then everybody wanted everything overnighted because they could. And then when it went from chromes to shooting negative, everyone wanted 4 sets of contact sheets overnighted someplace. So you'd rush charge that. Now with the internet, literally people like, I'll shoot something and they're like, are you going to upload those tonight? I'll be like, yeah, I'll process the JPEGs and we can upload them and edit it tonight. With garbage, I get it to them like the day afterwards. And they're like, yeah, and they start sifting through, and it's all really fast now. It's all because of the fucking internet.
Yeah. Wow.
And COVID-19, I think, is probably
makes everything faster. I felt like that has slowed things down a lot, at least.
I hope it. Well, I think it's going to change everything. We'll see what happens.
I think it's
so. This morning I woke up, right? Going to do a nice Zoom chat interview, and the freaking box just was off. It died last night. I got a kid at home doing homeschooling on the Zoom. I have fiance cats are upstairs working from home on the internet. So to go to Spectrum, you have to make an appointment because they don't want more than 3 people in the room at the same time. Luckily, I got an appointment, went there, got a box, came back. But I could have been on at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
But that was like, and there was a line of people outside the door with their boxes and stuff. And the guys, you have to make an appointment. And they're going, what? Yeah. We don't let 3 people in. It was bizarre. So all this is really bizarre.
Got fried. Yeah. That brings up a question.
Yeah.
Technical malfunctions. From a technical standpoint, has there ever been...
digital thing. Yeah, it's always the digital.
It's always the digital thing.
It's always
Let's not even talk about the camera then. Let's not even talk about the camera. From the standpoint of building this conceptual idea that you have, what has been one of the most challenging shoots that you've had?
Well, the one that the most recent one was the garbage one. If you look at it, it's that is a physically an 8-foot tall mirror in Vasquez Rocks in the middle of the desert, basically, in what turned out to be probably the wrong time of the year to shoot it, because it was high winds. The weekend before, that whole area was on fire. We were supposed to do the shoot the Friday or the Saturday before it, and we had to postpone it. Luckily, all the garbages changed their plans and
Mhm.
stayed, and we did it the next weekend. But it meant no one. It was a total cluster to get this thing back together the next weekend. Assistants were booked. The park wasn't maybe available. They're going to have an event there. They shoot Star Trek there all the time and block it off for a month. Star Trek decided not to do it. So it all worked out. But I took a mirror out in the middle of the desert in high winds. So in the picture, Shirley is reflected in that mirror.
Mhm.
She's got another 8-foot, 10-foot flat that's painted orange that she's standing in front of on top of a platform on top of with the flat behind her reflecting in the mirror. So I had 5 assistants. Mainly the assistants ended up being human sandbags to keep these things from, because it was super high winds, like really high winds, which I come up with these ideas and I don't think that, high winds. Every time I've gone to Vasquez Rocks, it's a perfectly beautiful still day. And then it turned out to be one of the windiest days of the year. Even the people at the park are like, wow, it's windy. And I'm like, holy shit.
How much do you think you can prepare for something like that?
I just don't. It just
You
totally
can't.
flew by the seat of my pants. It's like, I think we had 500 pounds worth of sandbags, It wouldn't have mattered how much. It had to be
Sure.
2 assistants there to kind of deal with and a band that's known me for years. I've known them forever. That would totally just, I don't have to be nice. That's what I have to say. I don't have to be like, please, would you move over here? Because they're not tender. They're just yelling at me, Cultice. I like being ordered around. Whatever you want, scream
Just
at
yell
me.
at me.
So I'd scream at them all the time. It was a lot of fun. Oops,
Yeah. How many people are typically on set with you when you're creating something?
Well, that was a big one because it was. How many people was there? Well, it's a big one because you have stylists, you got hair and makeup. That's when there was like 20 people.
20 people. Wow.
Yeah, 5 assistants, me, truck drivers. We had generators out in the desert. And one of the things that LA, I don't know if you know, but if it's a park, you have to go through the film permits. And everywhere you turn, someone's going, we want our money.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to pay $450 for some guy that never showed up to inspect the generators to make sure you have 2 of a certain kind of fire extinguisher next to each generator.
Yeah.
But I do all that production myself, and I would buy all those extinguishers, leave them in their boxes, and just return them to Home Depot. I'm not going to pay $1,000 for fire extinguishers. But that's so it's funny. You talk about these ideas. I come up with them or want to do them, and it's really up to me just to make it happen. And I've just always done that, even with back in the punk rock days or ideas in New York. A lot of the times they fail, but as I've gotten older and better at this, most of the times they don't. They actually kind of work out. I think I maybe know my limitations now.
Oh yeah, that could be. After a while, you tend to learn who you are and how you work. That makes sense.
Yeah, I used to make there's a lot of contact sheets of bands that are people with, like, say, some band called Glory Woods or something. I was supposed to have them with all kinds of palm trees and flowers in their arms and everything. And I got them the day before, not thinking that no matter what I did, as soon as they take them from the market, they all wilted. So it's these guys all holding on to all these wilted flowers. And I still did it. And it looks horrible. Plus, they looked completely stunned. Like, what's going on here? What's this guy doing? I thought he was good.
This is for our album? Oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Yeah, they didn't go anywhere. They looked like they were 2 twins. They kind of looked like Crispin Glover. 2 Crispin
Glovers. Oh, wow. Yeah. That'd be really
shorter, but looked just like him.
Wow. I got a question for you, and this one came from your website. And on your website, it says, oh, no, I'm sorry. This didn't come from your website. This came from an interview that I read that you did with a magazine, I believe, based in St. Louis. And in this interview, you said, when you're talking about the artists that you've worked with, you say, I'm not trying to put them into my photographs.
Yeah.
I'm basically trying to make a new image for them. I'm not a cookie
Yeah.
cutter photographer, and you talked a little bit about that before, but I kind of get torn right there, because I think the conventional education would be, or at least what I've been taught, is that to be known for something, you need to have a look, you need to have a
Yeah.
style. Can you talk about those two things?
Well, I think that, like I was saying, like with Anton Corbijn, definitely style. The '90s, he dominated all the, all the bands I wanted to shoot, and that was probably a mistake on my part. I should have been more of a not cookie cutter, but just had a more um, recognizable style. But I just couldn't do it. I tried, and I think I would fall back on looks or ideas because like say with Maxim and FHM, that's what they hired me for. They saw something I shot for the Source or something, a fashion shoot for the Source magazine, and they just loved that light. So then I basically, every shoot I did was a version of that light,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what they wanted. They didn't want me to experiment. I think for me, I just want to experiment in every shoot. But the weird thing is I love repetitive images. Like I love Damien Hirst's repetitive paintings. They're all the same painting, just a variation of it.
I was going to say,
I
even
just get,
your art
yeah,
series.
yeah, that's all exactly the point of that too, is to make it repetitive. It's the exact same lighting. And then when I frame them in prints, their eyes and their faces kind of have to line up in the same spot. So when you see 20 of them or 30 of them on the wall, even if they're a little baby, their head is that big and their eyes line up there, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're told to do that, and I didn't do that in the beginning, and because I think it was, I couldn't take a picture of Nine Inch Nails and then go and shoot Marilyn Manson the same way, or like say, I just couldn't, because those bands that then they would, Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson would look the same, so you can't. And then that they would hate you for it. So I think some people really appreciate that I come up with something new, is the best I can for each artist. And for me, it's I don't really think about it too much, but I think it is a little bit of a challenge. And part of me too is that I'm looking around at other people's photographs and go, "Oh, I love that. I want to do this," or I see some art thing like that Desert X thing. I really want to do something along that lines, and I'll go find somebody who wants to do it. Right now it's Garbage and Gary Newman. Who else? No, yeah, I put people, I don't want to be a cookie cutter. I guess I've never heard that word, cookie cutter photographer. But I do make images for my pop stars rather than putting them in my photograph.
How much more pressure does that put on you to have to deliver and create something new?
None. I don't even think about it really. That's the
Really?
thing, is I don't even really think about it.
Why is
I
that?
just can't. I just can't do the same photo all the time. And it's like I surprise myself with when a photo works. Like with Gary Newman's last album cover, a friend of mine had been out at this location that was an, an old volcanic crater hole where they used to mine pumice stones. The things they put on your arms, to rub off your calluses. And also they used to have lava rocks that people used to put that in their front yards as their landscaping in
My
Phoenix.
mom still does that. Yeah.
In
Oh yeah,
Phoenix,
because she lives in
yes.
Phoenix.
So
Yeah,
that's
there
where
you
it
go.
came from. That's one of the places. And it was to do it legally, it was way too cost prohibitive. And I went out there and shot plates of it to then Photoshop Gary into it. But I was out there and I realized there's nobody here. I mean, this is literally the middle of Barstow, in the middle of nowhere. I literally could probably go and shoot a Star Trek episode out there and they would have never known. There could have done 80 trucks out there. So I said, screw it. And Gary was nice enough to say, the day before he was leaving on a trip, okay, we'll move our shoot up a day. Then after we do the studio shoot, I'll drag Gary out to this thing. And it was just me and one assistant. And I hadn't really shot a daylight thing like that forever, but the light looked so great. I had just one silver bounce board and that was it. And it looked amazing. But in the end, I look at, and they've got so many pictures from it. And Gary was having so much fun running around in his new space outfit. And Gemma having fun. And it was just us. There was nobody there except for these there's caves where people go spelunking or something is what they call it,
Spelunking.
where
Okay.
you climb down in a cave. And
Sounds horrible.
but they just saw Gary running up on the ridge. They're coming up out of the cave, and Gary was running around in his outfit in the ridge, and I was down at the bottom shooting up. It looks like something out of like Mars.
Yeah.
But anyhow, they just saw this guy running around. It was so funny because they came over like, oh, it's photos. Oh, cool. How bizarre! This guy keeps running up and down, and back and forth. It was good fun. But that one
So
surprised me that it turned out so good, and I'm such a huge fan of Gary as a person and his music. He got me into rock and roll or punk rock and roll. That I did turn out fucking great. I'm so
Yeah.
proud of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome to hear. It's always fun to know that like these things can still be fun, even at your level, that they can be fun and that they don't have to be purely sterile professional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, getting the camera when I get to take pictures is the fun part. It's all the.
Yeah.
It is Instagram is kind of the way. Surprisingly, how I get a majority of my work now is through Instagram, which blows my mind. And if I did it more and was more involved, I might get more work. But it's hard to do. It's like, from when I was a photographer, we were never supposed to talk about photo shoots. Like it was, silence. It's just like, oh, it was great. They're wonderful artists. And now the artists talk about the photo shoots. They bring it. They now Will Smith opens up his entire life completely to everybody. Where just 5 years ago, that would have been completely, you have to sign non-disclosure things when you take photographs of them. And now it's like, you have to sign we're going to disclose everything about you.
Yeah.
If you do a shoot with me,
opposite.
I'm Will. Now we're going to make fun of you and take pictures of you and put you on the internet.
So strange.
You're part of our story now. It works great for Will Smith, but I don't think it would work well for Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah. It really depends on the on the type of person, for sure. But it's always fun to, I think, get a peek into somebody else's life. It's funny. I was watching a documentary about the rise of factories, I suppose.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how, early 1900s, factories were closed doors. Essentially, employees had to write sign NDAs as well. Like, you can't tell anybody how we're making toilet paper or brooms or Coca-Cola or anything like that. And now it's changed so much because people love seeing what's behind the curtain that they will pay to go on tours of certain factories and stuff. And I think that's what it is. And I can tell, even though you say that, maybe you don't put enough time into it or whatever, but I get joy out of reading your Instagram. And I
have to do it more. Everyone loves that Joan Jett story. Even Joan popped back going, she was like, oh, well, yeah. Hey, how's it going, man? I can't do her voice. That's what her voice is.
Yeah. Like. It's a very distinct.
That was a fun day, man.
And it was memorable.
Oh, fuck. It was hilarious, man.
I
didn't really talk about the photos. Just talked about the.
Well, that's what people want. People like to look at the photos and decide from themselves, I suppose. But anyway, I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. So if anybody's listening,
good.
I'm going to put that there. I got one last question for you before I let you go. I know that I've kept you for far too long.
No, just it's a COVID time. There's nothing really going on.
That's right. Except my daughter trying to break into.
Yeah, she come on in.
No, she's gone. She must have went back upstairs where mom is folding laundry, I suppose. So my question is, I oftentimes find it very difficult to create the type of images that I want at a wedding, because I feel like there's a bit of a pressure to deliver still exactly what the client is expecting. So
there's an expectation. Yeah.
Yes. So from a personal standpoint for you, without the feedback of an art director or even the artist, how do you know if you did a good job?
I guess I just I don't have that many expectations about what I'm gonna do. I think at this I've been doing it so long, it's the 10,000 hours that I even sleep before shoots now. I used to not be able to sleep because I was so nervous about I was going to screw it up. I don't get that much pressure from the images because I know that I'm going to pull off something. Like with Jeff Lynne, I'm so surprised what came out of that shoot.
Yeah.
I'm just dumbfounded. The pictures, and there's still a whole other wave of them that I can't release yet because they're waiting, and they're going to be waiting now longer because this whole tour is postponed. It's what am I trying to say? Yeah, I don't have any expectations about any of this now. It's fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say with the kind of work you're doing, Helmut Newton used to say this, and I got to meet him once, and literally I was shooting No Doubt for Vogue in one studio, and Helmut was in the studio next door, and the same sittings editor that I work with all the time. I want to say Plath isn't her name. It doesn't matter. The sittings editor for Vogue, she was doing Helmut and kind of doing us as well, but not really. She was, because Vogue or No Doubt just showed up in all their own clothes with their own stylist. Wasn't a Vogue stylist. Anyone trying to get out. But Helmut said, I do 50% of the shoot for the client and 50% for me. And I don't care what they say. I'm going to do my photos in the middle of it, at the end of it, at the beginning of it, that I'm purely just doing them for me. And then most of the time they don't know that I'm doing that, but I'm doing it for me. Unless they're paying me $1 million to do a booze campaign, I'm going to do exactly what I want. And I think that when you're doing photographs for clients, we get hung up on what they need too much, maybe. That's kind of if you just do what you want to do, because the more and more you do it, the better you get at it, they will like what you do. It's like you're not giving yourself enough credit just to just go and do what you want to do. It's like with any of these, pop star shoots I do, so rarely is there any direction. So it's really up to me just to do what I want to do. And I think the same with a wedding. If you go and do it something different, I know there's probably expectations of the perfect kiss. You got to get the kiss I've shot friends' weddings and I missed the kiss. Totally missed the kiss. Oh, it's I'll tell you some other time. My brother-in-law's wedding was pretty funny. It's the best kiss photo I've ever seen. They totally missed each other's faces when they kissed.
Oh my gosh. Eyes closed and everything, huh?
Yeah, it was a mess. Yeah. It was funny. It was in Japan too. They you just have to have fun doing it and not worry what their expectations are, because then you'll second guess yourself a lot. I know I have to, I guess the expectations are you shoot a band and there's 4 of them. I've got to put all 4 of them in the frame. Right. And then I got to make them all look good. I've got to remember their names is a good thing.
Always important.
It helps. It really does help. Sometimes it's hard. NSYNC told me, they said that you have to remember all their names. And I memorized all their names. And then it wasn't Joey, but it was 2 of them switched their names on me. And I'm like, are you sure? So they kept I'm going, okay, Lance. And it wasn't Lance, and they're all laughing at me. I'm like, oh, what the? No,
you're not Lance,
are you? Yeah, they're just messing with me.
Wow.
It was the first time I shot them, and then after that, they were like, "Whoa, man, you busted out so many photos. Those are great." Then they were nice to me the next time.
They took it seriously.
I shot them 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
You just have to enjoy doing it. I don't have any expectations, but I haven't screwed a shoot up in a long time.
No, that's good. That's always important.
Yeah, it's been a good 20 years since I completely screwed the pooch on a shoot.
Do you remember what that was? Would you be willing to share that?
I would say that there was a No Doubt shoot I did for their return to Saturn. It started too late. I made the mistake of letting everyone drink. Oh, okay. Except for Gwen, because she doesn't drink. And it just got to be a total mess. I drank too at a certain point. It was still 4 a.m. when we weren't done. And they looked really tired. And I thought I could push them through all these different sets we had built, and that they would do it. And they did it, but at a certain point, they all looked completely like tired
Yeah,
in every
but they
shot,
still do.
and they were worthless.
Uh-huh.
And the art director even told me that day, we can't get through all these in one day. They're not going to make it, and they've been on the road. And I'm like, but they wanted to do it, and they wanted to do it, but we wasted everyone's time.
Mm.
But now in retrospect and retouching, I could make them all look a lot more awake. That was just
Are you
back with Prince.
thinking about going back and doing that?
Oh, I have. Yeah, I did the one yellow set. I just switched out the heads where they all look. All the boys were the ones that looked the sleepiest.
That's hilarious.
Gwen looked fine because she always looks fine.
Yeah,
She's Gwen.
That's Gwen. That's Gwen. Yeah. Well, Joseph, I can't thank you enough for coming on. And
But we didn't talk about Korn.
we didn't talk about Korn. I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna wait till I cut this audio right here,
Yeah.
and we're gonna talk about that because I might get a little too excited for all the listeners. They might wonder what's going on over here. But yeah, again, I just want to thank you so much for coming
Very
on
welcome,
and
man. Thank you for
sharing
asking me.
everything that you did. Before I let you go, can you let everybody know where you would like them to check you out online?
It will go online to my website, josephcultice.com. And that's my, I spend more time in there these days than updating and making GIFs. Instagram is nice because I do it every day. Joey Cultice at Instagram, Joey Cultice. If you want to see a bunch of archives, go to my Tumblr site. Pop is personal. And it has a bunch of really old photographs, like all those early punk rock photos I talked about. But that's it. Just the website,
Yeah, it's where you got to be. You got to have that.
Yeah,
site.
yeah.
Well, again, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I look forward to keeping up with you and chatting with you again. This was
Yeah,
this
please,
was a lot of fun.
Okay, thank you.
Oh man, I could talk to Joseph for hours. The amount of great stories he has could fill a book, and it should. Honestly, right now, go to Joseph's Instagram page. The photos that he shares, the stories that he shares with each photo. I mean, he has decades of experience. He has decades worth of stories with some of the world's, most notable pop stars, experiences with them. So it's fantastic stuff. You have to go check it out. My biggest takeaway from this interview was just simply the importance of trying something new. Joseph had been a photographer for years, but then he decided just to try something new with his self and family portraits that he does with the fluorescent bulb that he was talking about. And then the importance of having a clear vision and running with it to make it happen. If you look at his photos, they're not all the same. As I mentioned, he said that he takes photos for the artist and not him. He's not a cookie cutter photographer. So when he has an idea, he runs with it. And he does that for every single shoot. So if you have an idea, if you got something that you want to make happen, do it. Do it no matter what. Just keep pushing. If something's a little bit off or different or not what you were expecting, figure it out. Move on. Make the idea happen. And if it doesn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, at least you tried. So that is it for this week's interview. Until next week, I want you to make do. I want you to make more. I want you to do more. And I want you to make do with what you got, because I promise you, it's better than you think. So that is it. Until next week, stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.